All right, we're going to go ahead and start off today's session. And thanks again so much for everyone who's joined our webinar today. My name is Marley Long, and I'll be getting things kicked off. And today's session is a much anticipated session with a lot of interest. So again, I really want to thank everyone for joining us. And we're going to be talking today about understanding Microsoft Teams. We'll cover everything you need to know. And I'm also very happy to announce that I have Matthew Bailey here with me, who is a Microsoft MCT, as well as Melissa Hubbard, a SharePoint MVP. So thanks, Matthew and Melissa. And both here are experts on the subject, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot of new and useful things that we can really take away from today's session. And of course, my name is Marley Long. I'm the head of the marketing team here at CardioLog Analytics, and we focus on intelligent reporting and engagement for SharePoint and Office 365. So just a bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. If you want to share this with a colleague in the next few days, we'll go ahead and send an email to everyone who's signed up with the recording as well. You can also connect to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @CardioLog, and if you'd like to tweet Melissa, you can reach her at MellyHub, as well as Matthew at Matthew J. Bailey. And of course, if you have any questions towards the end of this session, you can write them in the questions box, and we will try to get to as many questions as we can if we have time permitting, or we'll try to answer any questions that you have if you want to send us an email as well. So for today's webinar agenda, we'll start out with a very short introduction. Then Matthew and Melissa will really dive into Teams. They'll focus on the Teams overview, some components of Teams, user adoption in governments, as well as governance automation with PowerShell. And then finally, I'll show you how you can track some of your team sites within SharePoint Online and CardioLog Analytics SaaS. So stay tuned for that as well. Just a brief introduction about Inslot CardioLog Analytics. We've been around now for about 12 years, since 2005, and we're based out of Boston. Over the past 12 years, we've been focused on analytics designed for SharePoint and now Office 365. Our flagship solution is CardioLog Analytics, and it's built specifically for internal platforms, including all versions of SharePoint from 2010 to 2016. We can also track third-party tools like Yammer, Citrion, CRM tools, and we're available as both an on-prem and a SaaS-based version on Power BI. And we've recently released a powerful engagement tool that allows you to launch campaigns within SharePoint across the greater enterprise based on user behavior, and that is called CardioLog Engage. So now I'm going to hand it off to Matthew. Matthew's going to introduce himself, and then they're going to jump right into our presentation on Teams.
All right. Thanks, Marley.
Sure. I'll make you presenter.
All right. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Thank you so much for coming to our webinar today. My name is Matthew J. Bailey, and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, certified solutions engineer, and a solutions architect. I'm the author of the SharePoint Business Analyst Guide, which is a book I just put out a few weeks ago that you can get on Amazon, and I'm really proud of that. It's my first book. I consider myself to be a SharePoint all-rounder. I'm an independent consultant and speaker from the Washington, D.C. area. And one thing about me is that I've worked with SharePoint for over 10 years, and I've worked in roles as being a farm administrator, a developer, a trainer, a business analyst, and a tester. So I kind of bring a broad, varied experience to most of the projects that I work with. And if I don't have an answer to one of your questions, I promise that I'll at least try to find it or find somebody that does. My blog is MatthewJBailey.com, which is just my name, and my Twitter handle is MatthewJBailey1. And now I am going to go on to let you learn a little bit about Melissa.
everybody. My name is Melissa Hubbard. I'm a Microsoft MVP in the Business Solutions category. So I specialize in trying to keep things simple for end users, using Flow and Designer to automate business processes. I come from a project management background. I have my PMP, and I've been using a lot of different Office 365 and SharePoint solutions to come up with project management tools to help myself and customers. User adoption, governance, and training are topics that I'm passionate about and help customers with. I am a consultant with Withum. Matthew, next slide, please. So I'm a consultant with Withum Solutions and Services. We focus on Microsoft Cloud, Office 365, and SharePoint implementations. We've been internally using Teams quite a bit, and we would love to have any questions that you have about Teams or any way we can help you with your Office 365 deployments, SharePoint, basically anything Microsoft Cloud focused. Thank you.
All right, thanks for telling us a little bit about yourself, Melissa. So start off our webinar today, I'm going to go into a little bit about what exactly Microsoft Teams is. So Microsoft Teams is a hub for teamwork. It's an app that helps you pull together a team and work together using a chat-based collaboration workspace where you and your team can securely edit files at the same time, see likes, app mentions, and replies with just a single tap. It's a place your team can make their own by adding websites, Microsoft apps, and third-party services. Since Teams is built on Office 365, it brings together SharePoint, Office 365 groups, and Skype for Business, and combines them into one very powerful application. Now, Microsoft Teams can be accessed via an internet site, a mobile app for both iOS and Android, or a desktop app for Windows operating systems. And because it's in the cloud, it lets everyone work together no matter where they are. Now, some people are touting Microsoft Teams as the one app to rule them all. My personal opinion is that it creates a central location to manage and work on my projects. It saves time, enhances my productivity, and makes collaboration fun. Now, as most of you know, Microsoft has come out with a few different collaboration tools in recent years. Sometimes it can be a challenge to decide which is the best tool to use for which business scenario. To help you determine when to use Microsoft Teams, we have come up with a few benefits and use cases to review with you. Now first, with Microsoft Teams, all of your tools are in one place. SharePoint, PowerPoint, OneNote, Planner, Excel, and even third-party apps are brought together in a single workspace, thus avoiding having to open up several different applications to complete your work, as content collaboration, chat, discussions, calls, and meetings are all in the same app. Another benefit is that collaboration and communication are in real time with the use of the integrated Skype for Business and chat messages. An important governance and auditing feature for your organizations is that information that would be lost in the emails is now saved in discussions. And yes, you can use e-discovery and auditing with Microsoft Teams, which will please those in the administration job role. Now, some of the use cases that I've seen people using Microsoft Teams for include computer programming teams for daily stand-up meetings. That's only for an Agile or Scrum methodology. Marketing departments for product launches, human resources departments for evaluating job candidates, and sales teams for proposal generation. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer on when to use Microsoft Teams. It's your decision to use it, and it should be based on a combination of the willingness of the users to learn the tool, the company's modern workplace strategy, and the right business scenario. So now that I've gone over a little bit about what Microsoft Teams is, the benefits and the use cases, I am going to hand over the controls to Melissa so that she can go into some of the Teams components and some of the governance pieces of the product.
All right. Is everyone seeing my screen? Matthew, is it Teams components?
Here you go. Just 1 second.
Yeah, so there we go. Sorry about that.
Yep.
So now that we've heard about what Teams is, I want to get into some of the main components of Teams that you're going to see when you open up the app. So these components that I'm going to talk about are channels, tabs, connectors, and bots. So within your team, you'll automatically have a general channel that comes by default. Channels are a way to help keep conversations organized. You can favorite and follow different channels, so that way, say you're part of a marketing team and someone's talking about a new initiative that you're really not part of, you can choose to not follow that conversation in that channel, and it just saves you from getting a whole bunch of content that isn't pertinent for you. So one thing to note, as of right now, all members of a team have access to all of the channels for that team. So Microsoft has said that they are going to be changing this. It's highly anticipated to have the ability to make channels within a team private. But just keep in mind that for now, everything in every channel is available to the people in the team. So another important point to note for user adoption is that every channel gets an email address, and if you email that address, it creates a conversation in Teams. So this is your main driver to reduce emails. It's a great way to instead of losing emails when someone leaves your organization or things get lost, people respond to one person, not to everyone. If you get the conversation going by emailing the channel email address, then that conversation will be there. And as people come and go, new people joining your team will have access to that valuable information. So another thing to note is that when you create a channel in your team, it creates a folder in a SharePoint document library, and the documents that are discussed will automatically be put into that folder. We can talk about that a little bit more later on. But every team gets a SharePoint site collection with a document library where the files will be kept, and then every channel gets its own folder in that library. So to talk about tabs. So tabs are part of the navigation on the top. You'll see them. It looks kind of like this. You can see where I have conversations, files, wiki, IT sales documents. So this is what brings tools and services your teams use regularly into the channel. Tabs are added to channels and appear in the top navigation. The file tab, it connects to the team's SharePoint site. And what they really are is containers, because you can display different tools that are within Office 365. You could show a Power BI report. You could show an external website, a different SharePoint site that isn't associated with your team. Planner. I know for project management, I've been using Planner quite a bit, and I have a tab in my team. You can show an Excel document that your team uses a lot. So basically, it's a container to be able to display your different tools that your team will be using quite a bit, so that they really can just open the one app and get to all of the things that they need in their regular workday. So the next thing is connectors, and this terminology will be familiar to you if you've been using Flow or Power Apps. Connectors are basically the services that you can connect to that you will be displaying in your tabs. So you need to authenticate and provide credentials to the services before you connect to them and use them in your tabs. This is just a quick picture with some of the connectors, but there are actually many more, and they're being added regularly. And last but not least, let's talk about bots. So bots are automated programs set up to respond to queries or give updates and notifications about things you want to stay informed about. Basically, they're ways to automate simple processes. They use chat-based commands to perform an action. So an example I've used is there's one where you can get Scrum meeting, daily Scrum meeting updates. So you can just type in meeting update, and then from there the bot will ask you for your updates. It puts them in a report for the project manager. I've seen some for scheduling meetings where you can, right within Teams chat, like schedule a meeting, and then it will ask you a few questions of when and who you want to go, and then it'll create your meeting for you. The thing right now is to keep them simple. There's a T-bot that comes with Teams that actually is really useful for answering questions, and actually will chat with you when you first open up Teams the very first time, and ask you if you have any questions. And there is the ability to create a custom bot, which is something I want to explore more because I think this could be really powerful. All right, now that I've talked about the basic components of Teams, I just want to talk about governance and user adoption a little bit. So I hate to start off with the negative slide of pitfalls to avoid, but I think we've all, especially if you come from a SharePoint, Yammer background, we've all hit some pain points with user adoption and governance that we've had to learn from. So I'm hoping we can take those experiences and use them for Teams so that we can get all started on the right foot before we implement and end up with a mess that end users find frustrating. So some pitfalls you want to avoid are creating too many teams. You really want to know when to create a channel instead of a team. If you create too many teams, your end users are they're gonna end up not knowing where they should collaborate on what. They're gonna get a ton of notifications, and it's really not gonna be helpful. A lot of the time, creating a channel underneath a team really will do the trick, and it keeps everything more organized. You also don't want to lose content and frustrate end users when teams end up needing to be split up or consolidated. So if you do end up creating way too many teams and people are confused, you're going to end up wanting to consolidate them or split them up to have it make more sense for your organization. And the thing is that there's right now no migration tool, and it's not going to be pretty trying to move content consolidate or move the content in teams. Another thing is there's a lot of different features, and I'm going to talk about some of the features you should review before implementing, or if you've already implemented, it's not too late to review them now. So there's a lot of different features that you can customize to meet your organization's needs. And so if you don't pay attention to them, you might end up seeing that users are using a feature that you might not want them to have, and then having to disable it when they've already adopted it, and then that will, not leave a good taste in their mouth about using Teams. Another thing is at least providing some basic training, whether it's in person or materials. You definitely want your team owners to have training. Just avoiding the confusion and helping people know where to do what. You just don't want to have the duplication of someone using Teams, but then also sending an email about it, and then also having another report where they put the same information. People aren't going to do that for very long, and will end up not adopting Teams. So as far as the organization, plan to have organization prior to rollout if possible. It's all about balance. It's good to have a plan, but then also know that you don't be so rigid where that special business need comes up and it doesn't fit into your governance plan. you know, it's really just all about having the balance of having a plan, but knowing that there will be special requests or business needs that don't exactly fit into that plan. The organizational structure of teams should align with the business need to collaborate with a group of people. You do not necessarily need a new team for every new subject matter, and it's perfectly okay for there to be some content within a team that not every member actively participates on. So another big complaint people have had is getting too many notifications. So to keep that down, you really want to have your end users trained on how to change their notification settings. So some features you want to review. Email integration. So by default, again, all channels get an email address and anyone can send emails to that channel email address. So this is configurable on a per channel basis. So you might not want everyone to be able to email that address. You just want to look at those settings. And also, one unfortunate thing is that the email address that channel gets is preset for you, and as of right now, there's no way to change it. So you're going to want to make sure that your team members know what those emails are and where to find them if they lose that information. It's not hard, but it's just you need to know where to find that email address, basically, because it's not going to just come intuitively. It doesn't match the name of the channel. For external apps and cloud storage, by default, external apps are allowed. You can pick and choose which apps to allow, and you can also choose from custom cloud storage options. A popular thing that I've been seeing people do is adding cloud storage to the Files tab in Teams, which is the default document library that comes with the team, to another SharePoint library that maybe they've already been using. So that's a popular one, because then it creates a folder to that library right within the Files tab. So these are just things you're going to want to look into more, and for today I don't have enough time to demonstrate everything, but I just want to give you ideas of things to look for. The meetings features, you may want to disable this if your organization is using another meeting tool that they're really set in and have had users adopt. You might not want your end users using Teams as the primary meeting tool. Hopefully, eventually you would, because then it's still everything in one app. People can create their meetings, but you want to take a look. Also, ad hoc meetings within a channel allow for end users to join at leisure when they notice a meeting going. So you can, right within your channel, start an ad hoc meeting, and people can join when they see it. So some organizations might not like this feature, and you want to take a look at it, because all of these things can be configurable. External users. So this is another really popular feature. It's one of the newer features within Teams. So for right now, you have the ability to collaborate with people outside of your organization and invite them into your team. However, they have to already have an Azure Active Directory account, so they basically already have to be part of a different Office 365 tenant. This is being said to be worked on by Microsoft. They're looking to improve this external user feature. And also, the admin must enable the guest feature. So for part of your governance plan, right, you want to make sure that you have roles and responsibilities set. This is just an example. This may or may not work for your organization, but it's really important to note that by default, anyone can create a team and anyone can create a channel. So I see a lot of issues with this, you know, and this is a topic of debate as well, because you want your end users to be able to work and have the collaboration space they need. You don't want to get them stuck in some long approval process with a change board or something like that. But also, you don't want to have this sprawl of teams that's unmanageable. So it's up to you to know your end users and the size of your organization to know if you want everyone to be able to create teams. Because also a lot comes with the team when you create it. You get a group, you get a SharePoint site collection. So it's just definitely something you want to know. So one idea is to have a collaboration leader or guide who's just a specialist in teams. Not saying it has to be their primary job duty, but someone, if you think about some of your SharePoint great team owners, they might be people that you would want to look to as a collaboration leader, where if someone thinks they need a new team, or someone thinks they need to add someone to a team, or split up or consolidate teams, the collaboration specialist will have a good idea of the team's functionality and the organization and whether this seems like a good idea or not. The Office 365 administrators manage the features, licenses, monitor usage and security, and then the configuration. So all of these features I told you to review for the email integration, external apps, the meetings, external users, these are things Office 365 administrators will have to do. And then team owners manage the team membership and content, create channels and tabs, first line of support for team members, and then team members view and contribute team content. And it's also up for debate whether you want your team members to be able to add channels or not. A lot of this could just come with training, but by default they will be able to. That if you don't want them to be everyone to be able to create channels, then you'll need to do something on the admin side. All right, so here's some ideas for driving user adoption. Considering a pilot, this is for any new technology, having a pilot group with people who are going to give you honest feedback and actually use the tool so that you can get ideas of what will or won't work, and all of those features I told you to review. Maybe start with them all being just by default and then make changes based on the feedback from your pilot group. You want to identify advocates, people who have had pain points that teams can solve. Again, I know for me, SharePoint power users tend to be great advocates of teams. You want to set up your tabs thoughtfully prior to rollout. So if we go back into the components, those tabs are where you can put your tools that you use in your workday, right? So for people to really see the benefits of teams, thinking about what tools they use that you can put in those tabs before you roll this out so that they open up Teams, shiny and new, go into their team, click on the channel, and boom, there's that Power BI report they work at every day. There's their planner task. There's their Excel sheet that everyone uses regularly. That's really going to help people see the benefits. Again, we touched upon this, the duplication. You just really don't want to have teams end up being where people duplicate information that they're putting somewhere else. Holding training is going to be helpful, and your end users to know what kind of training works the best. And then just checking in regularly, and not just checking in, but also making changes when things aren't working. So just some ideas for training. These are just basic concepts that you want to make sure everyone who's going to use Teams understands. How to access their teams, what channels are and how to use them, how to have a private chat, group chat, create and contribute to conversations, how to access and share files, how to schedule and attend meetings, when notifications are received, and how to manage them. I think another thing you really want to make sure people understand is where their files are. So when you're in a conversation in a channel in Teams and you share a document, it'll automatically go to that Files tab. If someone's in a private chat and they send a PowerPoint presentation to someone, just one person in chat, it's going to go to their OneDrive, personal drive. So those are two really important things that I know I've seen people get confused about. And then again, The notifications piece is really important because I've heard a lot of people complaining about the amount of notifications they get from Teams. So helping people set up the notifications so they're only getting the ones on the channels that are important to them. So now that I've talked about some of the things you can do within your organization to drive user adoption and govern teams so that you just have the best experience possible for your end users, I'm going to pass it off to Matthew, who's going to show you how you can do some automation with PowerShell to help with the governance. Let me pass it off to Matthew. All right, Matthew.
Okay, thanks so much for that great overview of governance in Teams, Melissa. I'm going to go into a little bit about the PowerShell commandlets that have just been recently released for Microsoft and how they can help you automate some of these governance issues that Melissa discussed. So first of all, getting started with these commandlets, and I am going to do a quick live demo for you in just a moment. But the first thing you'll need to do is open a PowerShell tool, such as the PowerShell command window, Visual Studio Code with the PowerShell extension installed, or the PowerShell ISE, which is the tool that I personally use and prefer because of the type-ahead features that come with it. The second thing that you'll have to do is save and install the modules and entrust the repository. The commands are listed here so that you'll be able to know which ones to use when you get the recording of this webinar. You just need to pick which file location on your local computer that you would like to save them to. Now this process takes approximately 5 minutes, so I'm not going to walk through it during our demo. But just one important note is when you do this, you're going to get a pop-up box that says you'll have to trust the repository, and make sure that you click yes to that. After this, you're going to use the connect-Microsoft Teams commandlet so that you can connect to your environment, and you'll be able to then start to begin to work with it. Now, the slide that I'm showing below, or the image I'm showing below here, is the result of at the top of connecting to the Microsoft team. It gives you your tenant ID, your user ID, and the tenant domain. And then the next command that I used, which I will demonstrate for you as well, is get-team. And this basically is a great way for administrators to see all of the teams that have been created, because the more that you use this tool, of course, the more that this is going to grow, and you're going to want to be able to manage and see how many teams are being created. So to go over this, PowerShell commandlets for Teams, like I said, are new. They're in beta, so make sure you remember that. They should be available for GA or general availability release very soon, but at the moment they are still in beta. At the moment we have 23 commandlets to work with. Now, just in comparison, Office 365, when it started, also had approximately 23 commandlets. But over time it has grown, and I also believe that Microsoft will continue to build new commandlets for users to work with, and that the number will grow for this as well. So I'm going to highlight a few of the commandlets that were on the previous screen that were in relation to governance, or ones I feel that you'll use on a frequent basis. So set-team member settings. This basically allows you for an entire team to set whether or not they're allowed to create or update channels, delete channels, add or remove apps, create, update, remove tabs, and connectors. One thing about the team member settings, unfortunately, this is all or nothing. It's the entire team, not just one specific user within it. The next one I wanted to cover was set-team messaging settings. And as you can see here, you can set whether users are allowed to edit or delete messages. And depending on the organization that you're in, This could be very important because you may need to hold this information for retention purposes in case you have some type of SOX or I'm sorry, ISO 9000 or other compliance needs. You can also allow team mentions and allow channel mentions with this commandlet. The next one is set Teams guest settings. There's only a couple things that you can do with this commandlet, which are basically specifically for guests. You can either allow or not allow them to delete channels and update channels. Now, one of the most valuable ones you're probably going to find are new team and remove team. Now, new team, you can create new teams dynamically, and if you start to build scripts with this, or you wanted to build some type of automated tool where people are requesting a team, and then based on that, you could automate the command to create the team for them after it's been approved from your administration or governance team, this could be a great one. The only thing I want to note about this, though, unfortunately, since the commandlets are still in beta, there have been some users that have experienced issues and bugs with this. I personally, earlier this week, did experience those bugs myself. However, yesterday and today, the commandlet is working fine. I know that the issue was reported to the Microsoft Teams team. I'm not sure if it has been officially resolved, so I'm suggesting everyone try this in their own environment to make sure it's working for you. And then the last one, as I mentioned briefly before, was get team. This is just an important thing so that you're able to see all of the teams that have been created within your Office 365 tenant. Okay, so now I am going to do a quick overview for you and show you how some of these commands work. So, as I mentioned, I usually just open the PowerShell ISE as an administrator, get my prompt, the window opens, and the first thing I'm going to do is connect to Microsoft Teams, and you can see that's why I like the PowerShell ISE is because it has type ahead here. Now, depending on how you do this, you could either use the CRED PowerShell built-in command, or you can do it this way where it's going to pop up a box and you can manually enter your credentials and ID. I'm just going to do it this way. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. So now we've been connected, and you can see you've got your tenant ID, your environment, your tenant domain. First thing I'm going to do here is get teams in my environment. Now, as you can see, I have 4 teams currently at the moment. Now I can work with these because I've got the group ID, which is the reference number that you need specifically to work with each team, not the name, unless you're using this in a different way. So as an example, I'm going to create a new team, and you can do this 2 ways. You can either do new team with dash, display name, and all the other parameters and things such as this, or you can just do new team and press enter, and it will prompt you. So I'm going to do new team display name test team during CardioLog webinar. And what you're going to see happen over here is voila, the team has just been magically created. I'm using the Microsoft Teams Windows client, and you can see that it has appeared immediately. Like I said, some other things that you can do are remove team, set the team member settings, and some of the other things that I mentioned. If you want to ever learn more about these, all you need to do is get help and then type in the commandlet name. So, for example, if you're not sure how to use get new team or what it does, just type get-help and then the team commandlet name, and you will receive more information right here on what the commandlet does and the parameters that you need to use with it. So I'll just go back to my slides real quick for a quick recap. So Once again, a couple of things, gotchas, and recap with this. Remove team takes a few minutes to remove the team. So just as a note, because you may do remove dash team inside of the PowerShell, but then you'll still see it available, and you'll be kind of like, it doesn't work. But it actually just takes a few minutes for some type of process or timer job on the back-end servers to run it. Remove team also removes the correlating Office 365 group and the SharePoint site. At this time, there's no way to avoid it removing everything that's associated with that team. New team might be broken for some users, as I mentioned. You're going to have to test this in your own environment to see if it has been officially fixed by Microsoft or not. When searching for a team by name, you need to use the group name, not the team name, although in most cases they are the same unless you've changed the team name after the fact. As an example, get-msol group, which is Microsoft Online Group, and search string, and you're going to be using the name of the group. A few other links here for some additional Teams automation reference. There's a wonderful article by a good friend of mine named Vlad Katernescu from Montreal, and this basically just has some detailed instructions on how you can get started with the Microsoft Teams commandlets. If you want to actually go to the documentation because you're more technical and you just want to see the help files and the commandlets themselves, you can go out to the GitHub tree for Microsoft PowerShell for Teams. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the back end or other methods of doing some of these same commands, you can research using the Microsoft Graph at the link below for the Teams API. So I'm going to close out our part with the roadmap of some of the upcoming features. So it was recently announced by Bill Baer of the SharePoint team that Advanced Threat Protection is beginning at the end of last month, started to roll out that Microsoft Teams is going to be included. What Advanced Threat Protection does is it basically scans for links and attachments to make sure that they're not they don't have viruses in them, or that the links don't go to some type of a spoofing website. And as I believe Melissa mentioned earlier, private channels are in the works. I don't know if there's been a date set, but obviously the concept of having to share everything with everyone in the team is a little bit less desirable at the moment, and people are very much interested in the option of being able to just take one channel and only sharing that with specific people. Another feature on the roadmap I'd like to highlight is Teams templates. So similar to SharePoint, if you remember that you can build site templates so that you have all of the correct web parts and lists and libraries in them, Teams is also working on a similar concept that should be coming out. Replacing Skype for Business. So on the long term, Microsoft Teams is going to be replacing Skype for Business. However, I attended a SharePoint Saturday where Chris McNulty from the product team at Microsoft talked a bit about this. There's no date given at this moment. It's something that's going to take several years to accomplish, and it is possible that they still may leave Skype for Business as a standalone product that could be sold. However, I don't have a definitive answer on that. So the point I'd just like to get across with this is that I'm not sure that there's any reason to panic if you're currently using Skype for Business and not quite ready to jump to Teams, but just be aware that the future direction of what Microsoft is investing in is the eventual replacement of Skype for Business with Teams. And then the last, which I'm going to guess is probably the most anticipated feature on the roadmap, is the expansion of guest access. Melissa had touched on this point as well. I believe that the expansion is going to be, instead of having to have a Office 365 account or a live account, that you're going to start being able to use other emails to grant people access, such as SharePointMatthew@gmail. In addition to this, I'm not sure if there's going to be any changes or updates to the licensing features, but keep an eye out for that, because I know that I believe is the #1 most requested feature to enhance. Even though they did announce that they released guest access, it just a couple months ago, it wasn't quite exactly as people had expected it was going to be. All right, well, now that I have wrapped up my and Melissa's part on Teams, I am going to turn over the webinar to Marley and let her talk a little bit about CardioLog's analytics and how they can help benefit your organization.
Great, thanks so much, Matthew, and also Melissa for really interesting presentations. And I'm going to jump in for the last segment of the session just to show you a little bit more of how you can use analytics to really improve your adoption of your digital workplace. We talked a lot about Teams today, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can track your team sites in SharePoint Online. We'll also talk about just tracking teams in general. I know a lot of people have some questions about analytics and things like that, so we'll try to get all of your questions answered. So just a little bit about CardioLog Analytics. So our goal is really to help our customers constantly improve SharePoint and the greater Office 365 platform based on how it's being used. So there are three main pillars that we talk to our customers about. So the first one, of course, is to monitor tracking the usage within SharePoint. The second is actually engaging our users, so asking them what their needs are, what their pain points are, and what's not working for them. And then finally, the most important pillar is really to enhance. So we want to make sure that we're constantly improving SharePoint or Office 365, or even some of these concepts that Melissa talked about in terms of improving adoption, and really use these in practice across the entire Office 365 platform. And the idea is to have these actionable metrics which allow us to constantly make it better for our users. So I want to just jump right into a demonstration very quickly. Okay, so this is CardioLog Analytics SaaS. It's in Power BI, as you can see here. And this is just a general usage overview report that I want to show today. It's a very, it's a great overview report because you can actually see any SharePoint tenant or farm that you have here on the left-hand side with your portal tree filter. And we've also selected three main sections that we felt were the most important areas to focus on within the portal. So that would be our content here, your adoption, and your search. So first, I want to talk about why we even need analytics when we're talking about Office 365, or in particular for teams or individual team sites in SharePoint Online. And the key here is that you can really only manage what you measure. So only can you really know what's going on in your platform and define if the launch was successful and measure if people are using it and that your adoption is increasing, is by being able to measure what's going on. And that's really the end goal that we seek with our customers. So there's a lot of buzz around Teams without many definitive answers in terms of analytics. And what I can say is that Microsoft itself hasn't released any dedicated out-of-the-box reporting for Teams as far as I've seen. I could be wrong, but I did see that at the beginning of 2018, you should be able to get some light measurement through the Office 365 Adoption Content Pack, which they're renaming to the Office 365 Usage Analytics, that will have some support for Teams. And here at CardioLog Analytics, we're really focused on a lot of efforts on keeping up with Microsoft, and particularly the various apps within Office 365. So we do currently have Teams on our roadmap to have dedicated tracking for that, as well as currently we do have tracking for SharePoint Online, so we can track individual team sites. And that's what I wanted to give you guys a glimpse of today. Because when we talk about the digital workplace and collaboration, SharePoint is really the backbone of all collaboration, and each team having their own individual SharePoint Online site. So I think part of this monitoring process is really about tracking their various portal trends as well. So the first thing that you can see here on my screen is the portal hierarchy, as I mentioned before, or the portal tree structure. So in this example, we want to track our SharePoint Online team site, so we can actually just select here, and you can see that all the information now is dynamic and will only reflect your SharePoint Online team site. Of course, if you want to track any other site, news, list, anything, documents, that kind of thing, you can, of course, drill down within your portal tree filter, and you can track even individual lists within your team site. So that's a really nice feature of Power BI that really lets you drill down and slice and dice your data. So I'm going to go back here and just select my team site. And so the first category that I want to show you that we're going to focus on is our content here within our SharePoint Online or our team site. And here you can see you have these different widgets. And what I can do by opening these icons is show you a little bit more detail. So I'll open this widget here. And here I have a list of all of my most popular items in my SharePoint team site. And here we can really focus on what action we can actually take. So for example, once you know what's popular, you may want to link that on your main homepage. So for example, you have here this context list is a very popular document, or these best practices that could, you already know that this is something that's being viewed many times, so you have this information right there that you can take action and leverage it to make it more available for the users. So now we can actually flip this around as well. And we can actually show all of our inactive content, so all of the content that's not being used, whether it's your sites, your documents, or your pages, or your wikis, and more. And so this is our unused, or it could even be our orphan content. So what is the value in this? Let's simply get rid of this content that's not being used, so we can A, delete them, maybe B, update them, or if they're important and they're outdated, or C, if they're important but are updated already, we can again link them to our homepage and make it more visible to make sure that it's easily accessible and that people are navigating through the portal and finding the things that they're looking for and not wasting any time. So that's the action that we can take based upon our most popular or orphaned content. Besides that, we can see more information here, like everything from who owns this content. So for example, I can see this admin at CardioLog owns this content, and here's the owner column. And I can also see everything about the size of the content. So for example, here's our size, and I can see here some of these items are very large, and they're getting actually no page views. So it's very easy to see that, it's very easy to do some portal cleanup and say, hey, we have, all of these lists or documents that are getting, no page views, but are actually taking up a huge amount of space. So that's a really great way to just take action very quickly. If I'm the admin, I can go in and say, hey, who owns this? You can see immediately right there who owns this content, and then I'll be able to contact that person who's the owner and say, hey Joe, whoever it is, you have 60 days to get rid of this or take action to improve it, or I'm going to remove this content. So that simply just helps you take action based on the data that we can provide. So that's a page views table all in one widget. And if you want to see a trend over time, you can also see that for your content as well. And you can see it with this meter here. Let me see if I can open it up. Sometimes with Power BI it's a bit tricky. There we go. So here we can see, a trend of a page over time. For example, we just have some demo data here, but if you want to see that over time there's an increase in usage, you can really get a real overview sense over time if people are contributing content to the portal and that your adoption and productivity levels are increasing. And with this chart, you can see your page views data as well for your SharePoint Online. So you can drill down. And just like I showed you on the portal tree filter, you can actually drill down into your SharePoint Online team site, for example. And you can drill down all the way from your document, from your site level, of course, to your sub-site level, to your documents, and your list, and really all the way down to your microfeeds. So that's a really great way to see, have a kind of overall glimpse of what areas are most active and where you can take action. So we're gonna, now let's just drill back up quickly. And I'm gonna transition now to this adoption category here. So we have some really nice adoption metrics. Of course, I want to mention that we have over 20 additional dedicated reports to all of these categories and much more. So again, this is a very general report to really give you that general sense of what's going on. But you can of course use all of our reports to really drill down and really find out any kind of specific details as well. So here you can actually see our attributes and our departments. So we can see here, if we hover over our quality assurance department, you can see your marketing department here, and you can see what this number means. So this means you have your number of 75 active users within your marketing department. And you can also see, of course, all of your other departments here towards the bottom that are a bit more of your lagging departments, so that have less active users, that are generally less active than your departments here at the top. And this is, again, another place that you can really, just get an overall glance and really see, like, okay, this department is really, lagging. How can we help them? Can we allocate training? We can really make decisions about training based on this data. So of course, we don't want to, train all of the departments, because we actually see some of these departments are actually quite active. We can also drill down within the departments. So for example, we can drill down within our purchasing department, and we can see all of our active users and our inactive users, of course, within the purchasing department, as you can see here. And you can see any kind of information about them that you have available. So for example, you have Allison, you have Andrew, and you have, again, all of your lagging users as well, and you can really use that same logic in terms of training. So that's just a really great way to allocate your resources and make intelligent decisions based on that. And the most interesting thing that I think that we have here is really seeing how everything interacts with each other on this screen. So if I actually select one of the users, then again, all of this information is dynamic. And now all of this information reflects usage activity only for that specific user. So I selected this purchasing administrator. Let's select him again. And now I can open up this most popular content table, and again, see all of the content that our purchasing administrator is using, or that Allison is using, or whoever. And that's really nice about the connection between all of these things, and a really nice feature of Power BI as well. So just for the sake of time, because I see that we don't have a lot of time left, I'm just going to transition now to our search category. So this is our last category on our dashboard. Let's see if I can reload this really quickly. Second.
And I can stay, Marley, I just wanted to mention real quick, I can stay a few minutes late to answer some of the questions as long as that's okay with you.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Matthew. Okay. So again, as I mentioned just before, this is our search category. And this is really the last piece of the puzzle here, which is search. And analyzing search is a really powerful way of understanding what kind of challenges your users are facing, and can really help you understand what you can do to help them have a better user experience with optimized navigation paths. So with search, you can see all of your top search phrases here. And also at the top, you can see your successful versus failed search rates for each term. And I can click on each term. So for example, I can click on holidays, and I can see my successful versus failed search rate for each individual term. I can also see which departments are searching for that content the most, and really like leverage that content to those sites for those groups because I know what they're searching for and I know what they're interested in. I can also click on my failed searches to find out which of these terms people are having the most challenges with. And a failed search is one that retrieves 0 results. So I searched for holidays calendar and all of the results weren't really relevant, so I went and I searched again, and the idea is that, you know, here I am wasting a lot of time and I can't find what I'm looking for. So, you know, once you know what your users are looking for, you can really surface it and save them a lot of time. So you may also, you know, need to look more in depth into your search schema or queries in order to improve them as well. But having search analytics is really a great way to kind of understand what your search trends are and see if any of these, you know, symptoms of having a bad search schema within your platform. And it really helps you to understand how you can actually improve as well. You can also filter by date range here at the top, so you can see how it's dynamic as I filter for a specific date range. And you can also select by certain content. So for example, if I want to only see usage for my lists, I can also just filter specifically only for lists. Of course, any kind of my community site or any discussions as well. And again, everything kind of just impacts everything else on the report, and that's really what kind of ties everything together and makes this an interesting way to track your usage and really get that holistic overview that you need to understand what your usage activity looks like and what kind of challenges your users are having in order to really help them take action. So that's just a brief overview of how you can track your sites within SharePoint Online, and of course any other sites in SharePoint or in Yammer. I focused today on just our main usage adoption overview report, but again, as I mentioned, you know, we have so many other reports. You can track Yammer as well, and we also have, you know, a new engagement tool that actually allows you to target your users within the platform and send them in-app messaging and all different kinds of channels to really, you know, drive that engagement home and really, you know, try to ensure that you have a fully engaged platform and that your users are really getting the most out of the products that you offer them. So that's about it for my segment today. I'm just going to transition back to my slides. And I want to say thanks so much for joining to everyone. It was a really great presentation. We will be sending the recording out in about an hour. It will automatically send to everyone who registered, so if you weren't able to make it towards the beginning, you'll get the recording with the whole session. And if you want, we have a free trial for our CardioLog Analytics SaaS as well as our on-prem solution. You can visit us at www.intlock.com. You can tweet us at CardioLog. You can join our readers at blog.intlock.com. And of course, if you have any other questions about analytics, you can contact us at info@intlock.com. You can also contact Melissa and Matthew with their emails here, mhubbard@withum.com, as well as SharePointMatthew@gmail.com. And we have about, Matthew, if you want to take maybe just 1 or 2 minutes, we can answer a few questions.
Sure. I'll try to jump in real quick on
Sure.
one, and then I'll give the other minute to Melissa to answer. So what security levels and admin privileges are required to run PowerShell commandlets? As long as the person is an owner of the team, they are allowed to run those commandlets, or if they have permission to create teams, they can do it. So the way I'd look at this is if somebody's an owner and you don't want them messing around with PowerShell, I would disable via a group policy on their Windows computer the ability to even allow them to install a PowerShell thing. But if members or if you're not a part of the team, they cannot do anything with the PowerShell for that specific team. I don't think it's possible to make templates for Teams with certain tabs at this time.
That's the
Let me see
roadmap.
here. It is, okay. And anything to do with the scheduling or the similarities to Yammer you'd like to address, Melissa?
Well, so Yammer is really meant for an organizational-wide tool to share and discuss different issues, different topics within your organization. Teams is meant for a smaller group of people to do discussions, collaborate, use third-party tools all within one app. So there still is a business need for Yammer at the enterprise-wide level. You can integrate Yammer into Teams in a tab, but it's not been a real popular feature so far. I think they're working to improve the integration of Yammer in Teams as well.
Great. So I think that's all the time that we have for today, but if you have any other questions, you can send them to our emails, and we'll try to get to any of the questions that you have. And we'll also publish, we can publish this presentation as well, so any of the links that Matthew included in the presentation, you'll have access to. And again, as I mentioned, the recording will be sent out in just about an hour, so everyone will receive the recording as well. And thanks so much, Matthew and Melissa.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I look forward to hearing questions and comments from everyone who has attended. So thanks again for taking the time out to learn about Teams.
Yep, and thank you very much for coming to the session too as well.
Great. Everyone have a great day. Thanks so much.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.